how do you maintain, providing that support and that positivity also?
First of all, I don't know if I'm doing a good job of it. So I think right away I can say that, for all those who are struggling as parents to be present, I think that's an understandable thing, something I definitely can relate to. Sometimes the stressors of managing the yeshiva, managing my own emotions, doesn't allow me to be the best parent that I would want to be. And I think it's okay for people to give themselves permission to understand that we're not going to do this perfectly. So there are definitely times where I feel like I've got nothing left in the tank, dealing with everything in my professional life, and then coming home and trying to be the best parent that I can be for the kids it's not always easy, and I don't always do it well. I think b'derech klal, what Rabbi Olshin said is 100% true. We have a tremendous capacity as a people to somehow find laughter in very difficult situations.
Welcome back to The Jews Next Door. As a nation, we're going through a very challenging time. Our homeland, Eretz Yisrael, Israel, is at war. And so many lives have already been lost, and the war and the tension seems to only continue to be rising. So many people have been searching for meaning and ways that they can help during this time. And so many parents have been reaching out to us at Gen Aleph as to how they can parent during this time. And that component of parenting, which is something that already takes tremendous energy, emotions, mindfulness, is so much more challenging. And for today's episode, we will have the opportunity to hear from three amazing Rabbanim, educators who are parenting in Eretz Yisrael, in Israel, during this situation. We're joined by Rev Mordechai Burg, whose name you probably recognize as one of our amazing writers on Gen Aleph and is the Manal of Yeshiva Maseret. Rev Michael Olshin, who is the educational director of Yeshiva Torah Shraga. Rev Natanel Lebowitz, who was at Levat Torah for many, many years as the Manal Ruchani and is now living the life learning in the mornings and a Rebbe at Torah Shraga in the afternoons. Each of these amazing Rabbanim themselves made Aliyah, have raised and continue to raise a family in Israel, and are leaders of our door, and they are parenting the next door during this war, during this situation. And so we're going to be talking today about how they are parenting during the situation and how they continue to support and guide their children during such a difficult time. So thank you so much to each of you during your days for taking the time to talk to us. And especially during a highly tense time in Eretz Yisrael, to really take time out to talk about this.
Thank you very much for including us.
Pleasure to be here.
So I guess we'll just start. Tell us a little bit about yourselves in terms of your family structure. Like first things first, how many children do you have? What are your children's ages? Take us to where you live, just to give us a little bit of a sense of, where each of you are holding. I guess maybe let's start with Rev Olshin.
Okay. Again, thanks for having me. I live together with my wife here in Eretz Yisrael since 1991. We have 7 children. We have 3 boys and then 4 girls. Our 3 boys are currently serving in the army. They were all 3 of them called up on that Shabbat. 2 of them are in the north, 1 of them in the south. And we have 4 girls after that. Oldest girl, my oldest son is 29. We have a 27-year-old and a 25-year-old. And then we have 4 daughters, the oldest being 23, the youngest is 15.
Okay.
And we live in Beit Shemesh. We live in Beit Shemesh. You may hear Beit Shemesh a little bit here. Baruch Hashem. It is a challenging time, but we're very proud of our own family and all of our students who are here during this time.
Okay, Rev Lebowitz.
Thank you very much. It's great to see you, Rabbi Menchel, and not surprising that you're involved in such great things for the Jewish community at large. I've been living in Eretz Yisrael since 1997, Baruch Hashem, with my wife since 2000. We are blessed b'ayin hara with 10 children. Our oldest is 22, and our youngest is 3. We have people. Our boys are also serving Klal Yisrael, and also fighting, just not in the north and not in the south. They're doing so from the base medrash, and we have much gratitude to Rabbi Olshin and his children, and to all those who are protecting us and allowing us to be here. We live in Ramat Beit Shemesh. We've been in Ramat Beit Shemesh since 2001.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. I love that. I love how you put that. We, as my rabbi, my shul, during the situation, he said, there's two front lines, we're all on the same front lines, just in a very different way. There's the physical and then there's the spiritual. And we all have to do our part in America to learn, because we can't be there physically, but there's that's on the front lines too, for sure. Okay. Rabbi Burg.
I moved to Eretz Yisrael in 2008. I feel like it's unusual for me these days to feel like the youngest man in the room, so I appreciate Rabbi Lebowitz and Rabbi Olshin making me feel young again. I have 6 children, 5 daughters and a son. My oldest is 20, and then all girls down until my 6-year-old son. And I also want to express my Hakar Satov to Rabbi Olshin and his children and all the Chayalim for everything that they're doing. My daughters are spending a lot of time in the kitchen, sending as many baked goods as they can to the Chayalim. So, Rabbi Lebowitz, your children are serving from the base medrash. Rabbi Olshin, your children are serving on the front lines. My daughters are Baruch Hashem in the kitchen, trying to make sure that these soldiers are well fed. And we live in Ramat Beit Shemesh. Very privileged to be here in Eretz Yisrael.
So, of course, it's tough to you and your daughters as well, Rabbi Burg.
I always have the image of like a soldier running out to battle, and he's like, I shouldn't have had that last brownie. There's so much food being made for all these soldiers right now.
There was that image that was going around of like a soldier that was like, had a huge bag, and it was like, thanks for sending everything. But like, well, yeah. So, how it's interesting, as you were saying, each of the ages of your children, it's clear that we have some very different ages, because like Rabbi Olshin, your children are, clearly on the older front, and, it's probably handling it in a very different way. I'm now in a school of a 1st through 8th grade school. So like we're dealing with it in younger children, but I'm speaking to my old students who were, because I was in high school the years before, and they're dealing with it in a very, very different way. So it's probably, each of your children are probably handling it in such a different way. So I'm curious, what have you seen so far in terms of, like Rabbi Lebowitz, I know you mentioned you have a 3-year-old, and Rabbi, you have, I think you said you have a 6-year-old as the youngest, right? Am I getting that correct? And then Rabbi Olshin, your children are a little older. So like, how would you say you are seeing it so far that the current war is affecting your children?
My children, and I don't think they're unique. The saying is that "Ein bayit asher ein sham met." There is no one in this country that has not been affected, in the sense that we know somebody that has, that was killed, injured, or missing. My children my children that are home, my 4 girls, have been unfortunately going to many funerals, visiting many Shiva homes, people that they knew, friends of theirs. My daughter lost 2 close friends, who were, at that, on the kibbutz, on that party, on that Shabbat. And we also, I've been to 5 levayot. I don't want to sound so morbid, but that we've been the thing that we've been dealing with the most is that managing loss and mourning, of friends, of people that we know, people we're close to. At the same time, being inspired by just the amazing acts of courage. We've revealed that we're living amongst angels. The stories that have been coming out, I'm sure Rabbi Menchel and the rest of my colleagues here have heard some of these stories of just unbelievable acts of courage, of conviction, of willing to give their life for Am Yisrael. And that's, with the mourning, we're also inspired by these acts, and which gives us strength. Like, on our level, whatever we're doing, we feel like, I could get through this if we have people amongst us that are willing to do what they did to save Am Yisrael. So I think, managing that with the age of my kids, my youngest daughter, her classmate lost her brother, very, very tragically. Rabbi Tamir Granot is Rosh Hashiva in Tel Aviv. His son was killed just this Sunday. It wasn't in that attack. He was killed in the north. And so she has a classmate. She went to Levaya, went to Shiva, call. And for a 15-year-old, it's a lot. And so, but also hearing the amazing people that they were gives us strength to go through this.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. Lebowitz or Burg, how have your children been dealing with this and affected by it?
My son-in-law and daughter moved in with us for about a week after the war broke out. I think it was just more comfortable for them to be with family. We didn't know how many sirens, rocket attacks there would be. In general, I think each child is sort of managing in their own unique way. Some are getting more involved in, cooking and babysitting for kids from down south that have been displaced here in Beit Shemesh. Some are more talkative, some are less talkative. When the rocket attack first started, so we were in yeshiva for Simchas Torah, and I woke up all the kids and said, okay, we have to go to the miklat, we have to go to the bomb shelter. And my 6-year-old son woke up and he said, I don't even mind if they're going to fight with us, but why do they have to fight with us so early in the morning? I really wanted to sleep. And sort of like this like very sweet naivete of like not really appreciating what's happening, just like I didn't really want to get up because it was a late night the night before. I think b'derech klal, the older kids for sure are used to this. They grew up, in Tzuk Eitan, so this is not their first rodeo. When they were in camp years ago in Tzuk Eitan, so they still went to camp. They lived life, as they would normally. And I remember one day they came home from camp, and I asked them, how was camp? And they said, good, a siren went off, and we were in the park, so we all just went under the park bench and covered our heads, which is the protocol of what they're supposed to do in such a situation. So for them, they're used to this. From my house in Ramat Beit Shemesh, and not everybody's having the same experience, but from my house in Beit Shemesh, we can hear the booms of the Iron Dome taking down rocket attacks from Gaza. And so that's like depending on the night, you could hear, 80, 100, 120 booms in any given night. So, some sleep better, some sleep worse. And everyone's just doing their best to manage. My oldest was in seminary in Ofakim, which is about a 15-minute drive from Gaza. And that's actually where one of the hostage situations played out. That story of the woman who treated these terrorists very nicely and all the while was, texting with the police so that she could be rescued. That happened 5 minutes from my daughter's seminary. So she doesn't really have a seminary to go back to right now because the fighting is happening there. Others are in school, in and out of school, half-day school, so trying to adjust on that level. But we've been through this before. Certainly the older ones have been through this before, and the younger ones are, sometimes they talk, sometimes they don't. And we do our best to provide as much information, and giving them the context of what's going on as much as possible. But every kid is dealing with it uniquely.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. Really worth.
Okay, very, very well said, Rabbi Burg. I think in our home also, each kid is dealing with it uniquely, and fascinating for my wife and I that each child is also presenting their own parenting challenges. As as I said, we run a wide range of ages, so the questions and their ability to adapt is different for all of them. So we're trying to handle each one specifically. I would say, as often happens whenever a traumatic situation sets up, and I would be remiss to not mention my wife here, not just because she might listen to this one day and be like, "Wait a second, what were you talking about?" But genuinely speaking, I think that everything starts with the kli of safety. That in general, and I really credit Aliza, my wife, with this. That no matter what she's involved in, but I think she's really created an environment in the home that no matter what's happening, whether it's been a previous incident, whether it's this incident, and whether it has nothing to do with Arabs, then it's just daily life, that the home is a safe place to be. and mom and dad are there supporting you no matter what. So that if that's if that's the general environment in the home, so it I didn't even realize the how amazing of a mother she was until something like this happens, and you say, well, now's not the time to start being a good parent. Thank God my wife was an excellent parent leading up to this. So just creating an environment of safety for our children. So, for example, when the siren went off on Simchas Torah morning, so one of our younger ones, is taking it a little bit harder than the other ones, a little bit afraid for the subsequent days to go outside. But that was already within the backdrop that I trust mom and dad that they're going to take me outside and they're going to tell me that it's going to be safe. We had that emunus, that they could rely on that. And for that particular child that was afraid for Shabbos Sunday to go outside, we were able to walk them outside and to point out the Iron Dome and to be able to say, look, even though we're hearing noise, but we're not seeing anything falling, and all the homes in the neighborhood are still standing. And I say this with a heavy heart, just because we not everybody in the country had this, but when they heard stories about terrorists in the neighborhoods, so we were able to walk out into the street and say, like, okay, but Bli Ayin Hara Beit Shemesh is not in that conversation. Hashem should help us stay that way. And seeing it and living it, so that helped us get that particular child through that anxiety. But for some of our older boys, and you gave me credit for saying this, but it's really on the forefront of my mind. The point about the base measures being where their job is. We also run a range of feelings about how they're handling. We have a son who takes his job really seriously. He refers to himself often as, I'm being called up by my commanding officer, and I have to be on time to Seder, and I have to be a minion, and I have to learn. And that is a message that we're trying to transmit to the rest of our children, and certainly to the students, and to people in America also. It's not apologetics. If we believe in this system, if we believe in the power of tefillah, if we believe in the power of Talmud Torah, we believe in the power of mitzvos, so then this is critical in the fight as well. We have other teenagers that I guess let me just sidebar for a second. My wife and I have been trying to be a little bit careful about what we're allowing our children to see on video. And I personally, for myself, think video is important, because when we are davening, if we have a visual of what we're davening for, so what our eyes are able to see are just so much more powerful than the stories that we hear. So for some of our teenagers that haven't seen some of these videos and they haven't been to the front lines, they don't realize how serious it is. So some of them are having a little bit more of a challenge to take their role, to know that their role is different now in yeshiva than it was before Rosh Hashanah, before Sukkot. So we're trying to encourage them. It's a very sensitive time. We can't tell teenagers what exactly they have to do, but to try to encourage them as best as we can, without guilt, without expressing, like, do you know that Rabbi Olshin's kids are on the front line, so you should get out of bed and you can't go to the 9:30 minyan, or whatever it might be, without guilt, and but just try to empower them that just because we don't see with our eyes that there's something going on, we have to understand the severity of the situation and what we can do for Klal Yisrael. So there's I don't want to take up too much time. We took a long time, but there's a large mix. There's a lot of reactions, and we're trying to handle each one according to their own nature. And I'm tremendously thankful that my wife was able to set the environment in the house that they could have a safe feeling.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. I'm curious in terms of the way that when the actual war broke out, both Rabbi Burg and Rabbi Lebowitz, you were mentioning like how it happened, and it's probably very different for you, Rabbi Olshin, because in terms of like how you either found out or maybe you saw your children needing to go, and I don't know, maybe you could share with that. But I'm curious, like, did you have to tell your children about it, or like they like saw it going on and therefore you didn't need to help them process it, or even if you didn't have to tell them about it, how did you help them process what's going on? And it obviously changes based off of the age that we're dealing with, but so I'm curious. Maybe we'll start with Rabbi Lebowitz, just because you have like the youngest child here. Like, how did you help them to process that?
Well, again, we had audio help. because the sirens were going off and the booms were happening. So
But once they were going off, meaning like, what did you like say to them to like, meaning you want them to understand what's going on. And you also don't want it to be, I guess, too alarmist, especially for a 3-year-old. I myself have a 3-year-old. Like I can like relate to that age, even though I can't even for a second fathom being there and relating to that. So I'm curious, like how do you help them just say, okay, there are booms going on. It's this, or, take us through that a little bit.
So I happen to have been in shul. We were finishing davening when the first siren went off. I guess our kids wake up later than Rabbi Burg's children. So they were already they were already rearing to go. It was a ripe old 6:30. So they almost had a full day in already. I wasn't home exactly when the first siren went off, so I can't share about the initial idea. But but we explained very simply that there are people that don't share the same view as us, and they're I forgot exactly. We didn't say the word rocket, but or say the word trying to harm us, but put a stress on the fact that as you see with your eyes that nothing's happening here, so we're safe, and what we believe in when we say Shema before we go to sleep at night, and what we believe in that Hashem's always protecting us. So we get to see now that Hashem is protecting us. And then at the same time, because we had this responsibility, at the time when the first siren went off, we had no idea about the magnitude of what we were talking about. But either way, we knew, we predicted that if we were getting sirens in Beit Shemesh, so that we could bet that the south was probably getting more heavily rained on. So we said Shira Malos and Tehillim for those who are in the south. Then at some point in the morning, however this happens, there's always that guy in shul that started talking about terrorists in settlements, and the reaction was a little bit like the first time that I heard that there was an airplane that flew into the Twin Towers, or any of the more unbelievable phenomenon that we've been through. And your first reaction is like, okay, whatever. Like, why are people being too dramatic? So that aspect of it we didn't have to explain because we just couldn't believe that such a thing would happen. And again, trying to support them through the notion of there are people that are trying to put us in harm's way, but between those the heroes, the angels, as Rabbi Olshin called them, that are on the front lines protecting us, and definitely from HaKadosh Baruch Hu through our tefillah. So we're going to get through this the same way that we got through the other ones as well. It happens to be that my 3-year-old's a little bit more fearless. It's the one that's above the 3-year-old that's a little bit more tricky.
Right. Interesting. Rabbi Olshin, I'm sure that your experience was very different. Even let's start with yourself. How did you yourself find out about the war and also that your children were going in? How did take us through that experience a little?
So we actually we spent Simchat Torah in Yerushalayim. We live in Beit Shemesh. In Yerushalayim, I had a brother who was here in Yerushalayim visiting with his family. He has a son learning in yeshiva this year, and so we were eating together with them. So we were staying in an apartment in Yerushalayim, and my whole family all overslept. We were up to like 3:00 in the morning the night before. We woke up to the sirens. It was 8:15 when the sirens went off. So we were on the 5th floor in an apartment. We just ran to the stairwell. We didn't go down to there's a bomb shelter in the building. And there was a family there that wasn't religious who had their phones, and they were just like saying these crazy things like there's infiltration of terrorists in Stay Road, and I'm like, this can't be this. So I ran to shul after that, everyone was like, we were obviously shocked by the sirens, but like the rabbis spoke before, sirens unfortunately aren't new to us. So we thought, okay, the rockets, it happens. But then when I got to shul, and then I was hearing in shul, there was some people who were actually, in that shul that I went to, which I wasn't planning to go to that particular shul, but it was somebody on the phone already with, he's a machar in the army. He's a officer of a chativa. He's like a high up in the army. He was already on his phone outside. I don't know him. I don't live in that community, but just, and he was saying like, this is a terrible, terrible, terrible thing that's going on right now. Eventually my sons got to the shul that I was in, and there was a crazy thing. Like right after the Akafot, there was other sirens. It's about 10 something. And a guy comes running in from the street, and he starts screaming. And he says, "You guys are asleep at the wheel. Do you know there's a war going on, and they're calling up everybody? They're calling up, they're calling up people to the army." So at that point, my sons didn't have their phones on them because they're all out of the army. So they actually ran back to the apartment. They got their phones. And before davening was out, my middle son, at middle of 3, he was already called up. Wow. It was actually right after Bercha Kohanim of Musaf. Whatever, you're saying goodbye to your son. My wife was in shul, the whole family was in shul, and everyone gave him a bracha and said goodbye, not knowing, where he's headed. And he got into a car when his friends came to pick him up on Shabbat, on Yom Tov, and he went. We had lunch with my brother, and then in the middle, right as before lunch is over, my second son, the oldest son, was called up. He's married. My middle son is not married. My oldest son is married. Sorry. Seeing, watching the scene of a husband saying goodbye to his wife is difficult. And we're all watching this, all my kids. And that's, a tragic scene that we hope, never has to be again. And Bezrat Hashem, they'll all come back safely. But that's a very, very hard scene. And that's where, as a father, it's heartbreaking. And, I wish I had, good words to comfort myself and the rest of my family, but it's just a thing that just sticks with you. And then before, the Shabbat was out, my third son, who was married with 2 kids, he was called up. Again, the scene repeats itself. Now saying goodbye to his children and his wife. Those are, thank God they're all fine. They're still on their bases. They're still, waiting to go in, whatever they're planning on doing. We're not sure, but Baruch Hashem, they're all fine. And whatever, but it's been 2 weeks almost now. And it's not something you're prepared for. You don't get any training for this. It's something that you just do on the fly. But Baruch Hashem, and again, like Rabbi Lebowitz said, it's really the wives that are the strength of our family. My wife Shoshana, hasn't really slept much at night, but she is really the source of the strength in our home, and is always being positive. I'm the more angry at what's going on, and sometimes it's hard to keep that to ourselves and to myself, and not be critical of obviously we all have questions of how this happened, and sometimes even questions to God. We had our funeral of the Rosh Hashiva, and he also had questions. Not Chaf Shalom that it hurts our faith in the master of the world who's running things, but just doesn't make sense to us. The Hester Panim that was is just a hard thing. And when you, obviously, if someone loses somebody on top of it, it makes it hard, and it doesn't appear to make sense to us. But that's the strength of Jewish people, that despite all the Hester Panim, despite the, what appears to things not going our way at all, we still hold strong to our Amunah and our Bitachon and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's what the main messages we're trying to give over at these times. And I think our children have really risen to the occasion. They understand that there's a larger picture here. They understand there's another world also. And when you have that perspective, you're able to handle the tragedies of this world.
How do you provide the support and also try to keep an upbeat and positivity to your life and to your home when you yourself, like you mentioned, the feelings of anger or the feelings of, anxiety over it? Like, how do you, especially with your children actually, being there in that physical way and on the physical front lines, How do you maintain that?
So when it comes to my boys, every conversation that we have or WhatsApp is always positive, and especially when they're there and could be going in any day, you want to be as positive as possible, and also as strong. I'm not really an emotional person, even though but when it comes to speaking to your kids, like, you don't want to show any emotion. And that's what we've been taught, actually. They have given a lot of people who are experts in this, and, they've shared this information that when you speak to your kids who are in the army, you just want to show confidence and strength, and not to get emotional, to the point where I had this debate with my wife, like, should we go down to or go to visit them in the bases, which my wife wants to do, which my daughter-in-law went with her two daughters. And I felt it wasn't the right thing because of the emotions that it would bring up and the tears that would flow. And honestly, we want our soldiers to be as strong, and it's a Rambam. We try to rid those thoughts of our own personal families when you're fighting a war. And that's a very hard balance, because on the one, you want to see your son, you want to give him a hug, and but at the same time, you don't want him to lose that fortitude of, he has to be filled with a certain strength in order to fight our enemies. So that's a very difficult, balance to try to strike, in terms of, wanting to be there for your kid, but at the same time wanting them to be able to focus on what they need to focus on. In terms of our daughters that are home, so, laughter, trying to make light, and trying to, even sometimes dark humor, and trying to find ways to laugh. That really helps a lot in our home. And be able to sometimes give them a chance also to express words of frustration and anger. And because they need to be able to do that as well. But trying to be positive as much as we can, and reminding myself as well to try to be positive and encouraging. And even though, that things can be frustrating in terms of the government and how things are being run, and we're still waiting to go in, we're still waiting to react properly. But to knowing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the world at the end of the day, we have to remind ourselves it's not our government, it's not anyone else. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the world. And at the right time, the right place, we're going to celebrate a victory with Mashiach, B'ezrat Hashem.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. Rev Burg, I'm curious, also you have a very wide range of ages of children. How do you maintain, providing that support and that positivity also?
First of all, I don't know if I'm doing a good job of it. So I think right away I can say that, for all those who are struggling as parents to be present, I think that's an understandable thing, something I definitely can relate to. Sometimes the stressors of managing the yeshiva, managing my own emotions, doesn't allow me to be the best parent that I would want to be. And I think it's okay for people to give themselves permission to understand that we're not going to do this perfectly. So there are definitely times where I feel like I've got nothing left in the tank, dealing with everything in my professional life, and then coming home and trying to be the best parent that I can be for the kids is not always easy, and I don't always do it well. I think B'derech Klal, what Rabbi Olshin said is 100% true. We have a tremendous capacity as a people to somehow find laughter in very difficult situations. I'll be honest with you, I'm really more just trying to take the journey along with my family rather than try to guide us in any particular way. And so, for example, a lot of my daughters are saying Tehillim, and that's something that they find great comfort in. I have one daughter who doesn't find great comfort in saying Tehillim. She's a much more energetic type of child, and for her to sit on the couch and say Tehillim at length is not her way. And she expressed to me just the other day that she feels guilty about that, and that's why she's spending so much time doing as much chesed as she can for the Chayalim. And I just tried to normalize that for her and say to her that it's understandable, given who she is, that this is not going to be necessarily the place where she finds her place in this war, and that it's okay for her to find her place. For the younger kids who are going to school, and it happens to be that both of my kids go to school on the block, so they're used to walking themselves to school. It's going with them to school in the morning, holding their hands. It's going through the protocols and saying, in case we hear a siren, this is what happens. And they've had that already. They've had a situation where they were at someone's house. We didn't realize, but the adult had left the house. So the oldest child in the house was 14 years old. And there was a siren, and they were okay. They went into the mamad, they went into the safe room. And my wife and I had to discuss as parents, how do we ensure that that situation doesn't happen again? But they go to their chugim, to their after-school activities, and my daughter, who's 9, is in a gymnastics chug, and she was expressing to us just this morning how she feels so lucky that the gymnastics chug is held in a mamad, in a safe room, so that in case there's an azakah, they don't even need to go anywhere, and they can have the gymnastic chug as they always would. And so it's sort of interesting to watch how everyone's adapting. My daughter, who's in SEM, her life has kind of been put on pause. She doesn't know exactly what's next for her. I think a lot of the girls in her age group are struggling with that. They had a structure, and that structure was taken away from them. So allowing her to be frustrated about her situation, and also finding creative solutions as to what she can do in order to be productive in these times. And then, of course, and this is one of the most beautiful things that's happening in Klal Yisrael right now, is there's a level of achdus that I've never seen before in my lifetime. I was on the phone yesterday with one of the Rashi Yeshiva from YU, and he said to me that he's never seen achdus like this since 1967. I just can't describe to you what it's like on the ground here. I don't know what it's like on the ground in America, though we certainly appreciate all the sentiments coming out of America. But we're seeing a country that just a couple of weeks ago was exceptionally divided on all sorts of issues. The overpasses on the highway had all sorts of signs about democratic reform, pro-democratic reform, anti-democratic reform. Today, the signs on the overpasses on the highway are very different. It says, Am Yisrael Echad, and will be Menatzeach Echad, these really beautiful signs. There's no more Chilonim, Charedim, Datilumim, Mizrachnikim. Everyone's lost any sense of external community. There's a deep sense of inner unity that I think is just absolutely precious to see. It's something that's really soul-stirring for me. I can only hope that we hold on to this for a very, very long time, perhaps forever. And really just trying to give that over to my children, to say, look at how Klal Yisrael responds to crisis. We've managed to find each other in the darkness, and what are we going to do to find each other in the darkness? Somebody I know witnessed a car accident, and it was a man who comes from a more right-wing community and a man who comes from a more left-wing community. The man who comes from the more left-wing community was a little bit younger, and it was his fault that there was an accident. And he got out of the car and he starts apologizing profusely. And he says, my head is just not with me. I'm coming from a community down south. And this more right-wing person just stopped talking, gave him the biggest hug. And they were sitting there crying on the side of the road. And these types of stories are ma'asim b'chol yom. Every single day we're seeing more and more expressions of this brotherhood that is the Jewish nation. And so, for us, I think the biggest coping mechanism has been, how can we participate in this really beautiful new reality that we're all living in? I can't tell you. I want to say this. I wasn't invited to say this, but I want to say this. It's impossible for me to listen to Rabbi Olshin speak. It's impossible. We saw it ourselves. We saw, Rebbeim from Mevasera leaving their families, going out to fight. The sacrifice that people are making for our country is so deeply moving. I don't think there's anybody that doesn't appreciate each other right now. It's like there's no words to describe what's happening on the ground here. I think years from now, it'll be the type of thing I tell my grandchildren about. Yeah, I remember in, 2023, Tafshin Pei Daled, when all of Klal Yisrael came together in unparalleled ways.
Wow. Would you say that, besides for the scared and, in terms of guiding the different things that they're doing as to react to this, are there other challenges that are coming up right now that are unique parenting challenges? or that any of you are dealing with, or not necessarily?
We had, I think maybe one of the other rabbis mentioned before, until yesterday, the kids were out of school. So first you have the craziness of hearing sirens and booms and trying to guide children through a war and through the emotions, as the other rabbanim described, of what's going on with their people. But then there are a lot of hours, especially I'm sure that the other rabbanim here also share this, as we have responsibilities to the yeshiva. There are a lot of hours that the children have to be occupied, because even in the best of circumstances, even if there's pretending that there's some kind of healthy way that they could manage through the war, but they're still, at the end of the day, especially the younger ones, they're still children, and there are certain values that we have in the home, particularly with when it comes to watching. Not even videos of the war, but just as a pastime or as entertainment, just to keep their moods up, and to try to balance that with what happens in the home under normal standards. So that's been a challenge. Inconsistency, as we all know, inconsistency is the biggest danger to how children are growing up. So to be able to I don't want to use the word spin, because I think one of the eager way to get through this is always just be honest with the children about what's happening. Honest with don't sugarcoat necessarily what's happening with the war. Present it in a way that's appropriate for younger children, but don't sugarcoat it. Don't sugarcoat what's happening with Hashem. Don't sugarcoat what's happening with your parents, and don't sugarcoat about how we're handling our home and the values and the standards that we live according to, even though they're getting stretched a little bit as we have to juggle the various responsibilities.
Sure. Anyone else have specific things, or if not, it's okay.
One thing I'm noticing is, there's this phrase of Misha ma'amin lo mefached, and getting the question from Talmidim, from Talmidot, from my own children, if I am afraid, is that a chisaron in my emunah? And teaching them that having emunah means allowing yourself to have the inner strength to feel all of the various feelings that come up, and to not try to suppress whatever it is that you're feeling, and to allow those things to come up, and then to deal with those feelings, and in the face, let's say, of fear, finding courage. And when we say gam kielech begeitz hamavis lo ira ra, it doesn't mean that there's no fear. It means that we found an inner strength of emunah to confront that fear, and that our emunah is greater than our fear, and that there's only courage when there's fear. So the idea that people are like, I have to be strong and therefore I can't be afraid, just teaching the kids here that it's okay to be afraid, and there's strength in being afraid, and then confronting that fear with courage.
Totally. Of course. Thank you for sharing. I'm curious, have any of you, I know, Rabbi Olshin, you mentioned this before, that there's feelings of some theological questions that can come up at this time. I'm curious, are you are any of you dealing with theological questions from your children, or maybe from Talmidim as well, or Talmidos, and how are you dealing with that during this time?
I've only gotten the question like once or twice, actually, which is interesting. I didn't get it from my own kids, but I did get it. I was in seminary this past week for Shabbos. I think 2 or 3 girls expressed something like that. So in general, I'm not getting the question. But when I did get the question, I responded with I think what's the classic response, which is Keli Keli Lama Azavtani. So we don't say Lama Ela Lema. So if we're in a situation, like Rabbi Olshin said, of unparalleled Hester Panim, the question is how we're going to choose to respond. And in general, I don't think there's any great questions to why God does anything. There's a level of hubris that it would take for any rabbi to try to answer that question. And when we see that, let's say, for example, when Chazal give us reasons for things, I think that was more the growth-oriented opportunities that they chose to engage those moments of Hester Panim. rather than trying to understand why anything in this world happens. I remember when the Rebbe that I was learning smicha under, his mother passed away, and some fake makubal came to pay a shivakol, and he said to this Rebbe of mine, he said, do you want me to tell you why your mother passed away? And he said, if you can tell me why one blade of grass grows, then you can tell me why my mother passed away. I think for us to pretend why we know, this ridiculous, insane tragedy happened, I think it's not for anyone to say anything like that. But it is an amazing opportunity for us to teach our children that we respond with strength to tragedy. Again, just to highlight all of the strength that's happening in the community right now is beyond anything I've ever seen. We're responding in ways that I never thought possible.
I think, like Rabbi Burg is saying, the questions have come up. I also try to sort of preempt them. We try to preempt them by addressing some of these issues. Again, we cannot explain why these happened, but we do talk about a certain level of comfort. Rabbi Lebowitz and I both do a lot of Holocaust education. We're in Poland often, taking groups, and unfortunately, a lot of the stories that we share there, have sort of come to life again. But one of the things that we try to address is the comfort that comes from the fact that all of the 1,300 Jews that were killed, murdered, did it because they were killed because they were Jews. Whether it was a hero's death, like a Yosef Gedalia, Hashem Yinkom Damo, and Elchanan Kamenson, the guys who just got in their cars and responded, or it was the party goers who were shot in the back trying to run for their lives. They were all killed because they're Jews. And as Chazal tell us, Gemara Baba Basra, Daf Yud, that anyone who's killed, like the Harugei Lud, their place is in the highest, just Tachas Kisei HaKavod. Their place in Shamayim is in the highest place. So that has been a source of comfort for us on some level. That when you take into perspective is, that there are two worlds, that we can sort of deal. We know that every single one of these Kedoshim are in a better place. Of course, the pain and of those that are here is great, and the tears continue to flow. But I think that's an area that we feel we have a little confidence in terms of that, and what we believe in terms of their place in Shamayim. And I think that's really the areas that we can address. Like the Rabbi Burg said, we have no idea why these things happen. We don't understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan. But that's when Emunah really kicks in. Emunah kicks in when there are difficult questions. When there are questions, it's easy to have Emunah when everything's going wonderful and to believe in God. But when things aren't going our way and it seems like it's not the plan, that's where faith comes in, and that's where we have to dig deep and believe in the larger story, larger perspective that Kadosh Baruch Hu is running this world despite what's going on.
Thank you for sharing. I'm curious, one thing we've really been talking a lot about parenting in terms of how we are helping our children, how we are helping others during this time. But how, as a parent, are you helping yourself? Meaning, how do you take care of yourselves to be able to be a good parent during this time, both physically and emotionally? Meaning, how are you taking care of those needs? I guess we'll start with Rav Lebowitz, since we just heard from both Rav Olshin and Burg.
I guess we'll find out the answer. It should be soon when things calm down and we have a moment to step back and reflect about whether going full speed and giving 100%, both to the family, to the children, to the yeshiva, to the community, to the media community that we live in, to the community of Am Yisrael at large, as Rabbi Burg said. A lot of that being proactive and going on the offensive allows, at least for me, allows us to not necessarily process a need right now. Do I have a personal need? There's just so much. There's so much going on, and there's so much to do that I'm sure that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving all of us tremendous doses of siyata d'shmaya to be able to be pulling the hours that we're pulling, and hopefully to putting words of chachma in our mouths as we deal with all the various people that we spoke about, and especially as we deal with the talmidim. So it could be that at some point, I hope not. Hashem should help continue giving all of us strength, but it could be that we're going to crash. But I don't know. I kind of just view it right now as we're a people that has people that need whatever contribution that we could give. Hopefully, I'm doing my small part. Hopefully, I'm doing as much as I possibly can. And really, the focus I think is more on that than it is necessarily to, I guess what it sounds like a little bit of what you're asking about self-care. Hashem should continue helping us be healthy, right. And maybe the diet will have to wait.
Amen.
Till after there's a call for a ceasefire. I look forward to getting approval from everybody else who's on this panel, as we've all shared, in those battles. But there's a tremendous amount of immediate need, and my focus, I think, right now is more on that. And I gain strength, when you get the nod from a child, when you get the nod from a Talmud, thank you very much. Like, okay, wait a second, that made a difference. Maybe selfishly, but that feeling propels the strength for the next little bit.
Right, Burg, that you mentioned before that there are times when you feel just depleted and feel like, how do you give over? So how are you restoring your strength in order to continue to give over?
Actually, liked Rabbi Leibowitz's answer very much. I think it would be dishonest of me to say that I'm engaged in the best self-care right now. But I can share with you something that I heard from Rav Weinberger many years ago. Rav Weinberger told the story of Rav Shayel of Karistir, who, when he was just a bacher, and he was the shamash to his own Rebbe, to Rav Hershela. So Rav Hershela was watching Shayel give out the bulkalach from the bag. He was giving out the challah rolls to all the visitors that had come. And he was watching Shayla very intently. And one of the Hasidim asked the Rebbe, he said, "Why are you watching Shayla so carefully?" And the Rebbe said, "Shayla hasn't had bulkalach in that bag for a very long time. He's reaching into a bag that has no bulkalach left, and he's pulling out bulkalach." And, at first when Rav Weinberger was telling the story, so I'm a fan of a good Hasidic Shemaisa, but it didn't really touch me in a deep way. Because I didn't really know what the myphus was, like the big myphus that he was pulling out bulkalach. And Rav Weinberger explained, so there are times in life where we have nothing left in the bag and we have to figure out how to pull out those bulkalach anyway. And I think that that's very much my experience right now. Between Talmidim in yeshiva, the shiurim that I'm privileged to deliver, and then my own family, I don't think that I'm engaged in any form of self-care right now. I wish that I could say, and I think this is probably the right thing to say, and it's probably the true thing of what I should do, that if you don't take time to sharpen your own axe, then you're not going to do a good job cutting down the forest. Right now, I think there's so many balls up in the air that it'd be very difficult to let some of those balls drop. And I think that's okay and understandable. So I think the only thing that I can give myself right now is a little bit of compassion, as I'm not necessarily doing what I need to be doing. And I certainly look forward to joining Rabbi Lebowitz on our post-war diet program. But I think we're all just doing our best, and it's okay to have some compassion.
Rabbi, I have to run. I'll just tell you, I'm listening to Rabbi Burg.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for sharing.
I had the opportunity to go with Rabbi Olshin the other day. We had a little bit of a ride together to be Menachem Level, one of the families. And I think, as cliche as it sounds, being here on this Zoom with you, seeing you and what you accomplished. We know each other for a long time. I've seen you at a much younger stage. To see what you've built yourself into, and spending time with Rabbi Olshin and Rabbi Burg. Maybe if we're gonna go post-war diets, maybe we should go full out. While during the war, maybe we should do self-care tonight in Ramat Beit Shemesh. But being together, as cliche as it sounds, being together with the chevra, Even if it's going to a shiva call, even if it's talking about difficult things. But knowing that we have, that I feel so close to Rabbi Burg, knowing that, seeing his face, even if I haven't spoken to him all week about this particularly, but that chevra as part of the Achdus of Am Yisrael, maybe that's really also what gives me a lot of strength. So yeah, Shkoch Deborah, I'm sorry that I have to run.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the time and
Call me Shosi with Tzarkei Tzibur, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael Sarov.
Rabbi Lebowitz, Rabbi Menchel said that Jen Olive is sponsoring Chulent tonight in the Kiryah for all of us. So I'm looking forward. 10:30 tonight, 11 o'clock at night. We'll go up before we go down.
Well, then I really hope that my wife is not listening to this. That's lacha.
Thank you, Amen. Rabbi Olshin, if you can share, during, especially, I feel like not to put, the spiritual front lines lesser, but there's a higher intensity when you yourself are dealing with your children are on the front lines in a physical way. And, I feel like it in a way maybe requires even more self-care or self-awareness at this time. What do you,
again, I agree with the other Rebbeim. It's a hard time to exercise, hard time to eat right. Even though we are reminded, and my wife reminds me that we have to take care of ourselves. I'm like I haven't shaved since it's playoff time, in that sense. And even though my wife tells me like, when are you going to shave already? But I think we're on an OU sponsored podcast, and I always encourage our students when they go back to the States to get involved in giving, whether it being an NCSY advisor or any other kind of capacity where they're the ones who have to provide for others. And I find that it gives them great strength because people are looking up to them and say, okay, I have to look up to you to provide me with chizuk. So that then forces them to be people with chizuk, with strength. So I think in that sense, like, because, we are involved with the yeshiva and we have to provide for our students. So because, I'm trying to encourage them to stay in Eretz Yisrael and what they're doing is so important and what an amazing experience of growth they're having now, because of what's going on around. So then that's, I guess, gives us a little bit more strength because we have to be the ones to provide for others. Same thing, of course, in the home. If I'm going to be encouraging my kids, so I have to be strong myself. But when the door is closed and just my wife and I, and it's different. It's different. What we'll share with each other, it may be a little bit different than what we're saying with our kids or our students. But again, this is part of the psychology of war. You have to, lahavdil, a general or a mifaked, an officer has to be a source of strength, even if he's out. Like Rabbi Burg said, the no more bulkas left. You gotta still provide. And I'd like to get one of your bulkas, Rabbi Burg, or your daughters, one of them. We have no food left in our house either. Everything in our house has been given out to everyone else. So send some bulkas our way also. So yeah, you have to just find strength. I mean, literally what Rabbi Burg described. The last week, certainly here, this week's calmed down a little bit, but like there was a call. Okay, soldiers need the underwear. They need socks. They need toothbrushes. I come home at night from yeshiva and like, I don't have a toothbrush. I have no underwear left in my drawer. So somehow I still have to provide these things even when there's nothing left. And I guess that's the way we do it. But certainly on the physical side of things, whatever weight I may have lost over the summer, it's all come back, and we're eating like not healthily anymore. That's, I guess, a little bit of our comfort. It provides a little source of comfort, even though we're going to pay for it. but it's something that we need to do. We need to do. We need to exercise. We need to go out in the morning and get the endorphins to help us through the day. And we need to remind ourselves that we also have to take care of ourselves.
Sure. One of the things that you just mentioned, in terms of like the difference of what you're dealing with either on a family level, but also on like the Talmidim in yeshiva. So I'm curious when, you're the Talmidim in yeshiva you're parenting in a way also, you're dealing with them in a way. So they grew up in America and they're and they're only there really for first this time during this year. So they're so not used to this. Like your children in a way, I think each of you mentioned that like hearing the sirens in a way, we're a little bit used to it. I know that like my sister lives in Ramat B'Shemesh as well. And she was saying like when the first siren went off, it was very scary. And at the same time, they were also like a little bit used to it. So they knew exactly what the protocol was and they all ran into it. How are you helping, the Talmidim that you are in a way parenting them and helping them through the situation who are not used to this and don't have the fortitude to be able to deal with it? How are you helping them?
It's true. This is their first time for a lot of them. I guess you sort of build those resilient muscles by going through what they're going through. We remind them every day that they're heroes. We speak about superheroes when we speak about some of the people, the fighters and the guys and soldiers. And, we speak about superheroes and heroes. Like our guys are heroes. They're not on the front lines. They're not risking their lives. They're in a safe place, relatively to what else is going on in this country. But they're heroes. And we are trying to be very positive and to try to build them up. And they are becoming much more resilient. And it's an amazing thing. We took our students to one of the funerals. There's a lone soldier, Natanel Young from England. We're not far from Har Herzl. Our yeshiva is a 7-minute drive to Har Herzl. So we took a lot of guys to Har Herzl, and it happened to be when we were in Har Herzl, there was a siren that went off, and they weren't protected. They weren't, undercover, and they had to get on the floor, like was described earlier, and just put their hands over their head. And it was a frightening experience. There's no question. It was tough. And for a lot of them, it was a very challenging experience. When we walked back to yeshiva and we were talking about it, so we try, you try to make a little bit light of the situation again, just to release the tension and to joke a little bit. But one of the things I was telling them, look, you are building certain muscles that we don't have opportunity to address in normal life. And you see it. You see the results. These guys are becoming more resilient every time there's a siren. Thank God it's been quiet relatively this past week. But, they're much more calm. They walk down to the bomb shelter with calm, collected. No one's panicking. And that's how you grow. Unfortunately, through these situations, this is how you grow. And I think they're feeling that. They're feeling those who Baruch Hashem, the overwhelming majority of the guys are here in yeshiva. There are guys who have left, but the overwhelming guys that are here, they're feeling the growth is exponential. It's something that they've already experienced. They haven't had a lot of time to learn so far. It's only been a month and a half since they arrived here. But the growth that's happening because of what's going on in terms of the real core issues of tzaddik be'emunato yichya, the most essential part of what Judaism is, they are wearing their emunah on their sleeve. They are living emunah, tzaddik, and that's what's making them into tzaddikim. Be'emunato yichya, they are living emunah, and there's nothing like it. And unfortunately, halavai, we don't need these things in order to become that. But this is what we're experiencing, and this is, I think, what's giving them strength.
Oh, that's very powerful. Very powerful. Hey, Burg, how are you helping the Talmidim during this time?
Yeah, first of all, I couldn't agree with Rabbi Olshin more. I think the boys that are here are growing in ways that they don't even understand yet. And I think, we'll look back on this in 20 years and say like, wow, that was such an incredible time. You hear people who were here during the Gulf War talk about what it was like to be here. I think that our kids are going to be talking like that in 20 years from now. I think we have mental health services as part of our yeshiva, and so we have therapists on staff that are available to the boys, and some of the boys are choosing to use those services, and some of the boys are not. and that's okay. And of course, I think like in all yeshivas, the rebbeim are there for the guys. The rebbeim are so dedicated in every yeshiva, really, to the boys, and those types of conversations, helping them learn how to manage. For us, I think a large part, like Rabbi Olshin was saying, is the experiences that the boys have been able to have, and that helps them cope. So, for example, we adopted a Tzanchanim Gidud, a battalion of paratroopers that we, through various channels, discovered were missing basic necessities. And so we had a yeshiva campaign just to, provide for them and whatever chesed projects we were going to have afterwards. The response was so beyond anything we could have imagined. And it's a testament to Klal Yisrael and how amazing Klal Yisrael is right now. We had, within 20 minutes, we had raised $50,000. Within 45 minutes, we had raised $100,000. I haven't checked what it is at this particular moment, but last I checked, it was just a shade under $300,000. So that's pretty incredible. I would love to see actually what it is right now. I don't want to stop talking in the middle, but it's been pretty incredible. I imagine it's over $300,000 at this point. And then we had all the goods that were brought down to the yeshiva. The boys packed everything up in boxes. And then the tzanchanim actually came down to Mevaseret to pick it up. And so when the boys came out to greet the tzanchanim as they came down with their truck, the dancing, the singing, there was a kumzis with them. They were loading up the truck. So that feeling of participation was huge for the boys. And since then, that was last week, this week, there was again a battalion of troops that were actually located in Mevaseret, that they're getting breakfast and dinner, but they weren't getting lunch. And so we brought 2 shiurim down, and they made a barbecue for the chayalim, and that was very special. And then today, the boys have a whole bunch of kids that from down south that are displaced right now, and there was like a big soccer tournament between the kids who are younger than the guys in yeshiva, but playing with them. And then Matzei Shabbos, we're going have a Malav Malka with these families. And what I'm seeing, again, for sure, Rabbi Olshin said that the boys are building up incredible resilience, and Baruch Hashem, it has been very quiet. What I'm really seeing is that the boys are finding a way to connect to Am Yisrael in this time that I don't think they've ever had before in their life. And perhaps I hope they'll never have again. Certainly I hope they'll never have the need to connect to Am Yisrael like this again. But when these boys are in high school in America, so Eretz Yisrael can be somewhat academic. It's like maybe a place I went to for the summer to some sort of program. When you're living it and you're part of this, it changes the way that you see Eretz Yisrael. It changes the way that you see Am Yisrael. And there's a tremendous chinuch opportunity here, which is to tell these boys, these are not like your distant cousins across the sea. This is you. This is you. They came across the border for you, and we're going to respond as one nation. So that I think has been the most incredible thing, is seeing the boys, like the pride that they have of being here. And again, I think what Rabbi Olshin said is a perfect line. I'd never heard it until this moment. There's superheroes and there's heroes. But I think every guy that stayed is a hero. And I think they're gaining twice as much as they're giving, because they're growing in incredible ways.
Wow. As we wrap up, any final message for parents, both in Eretz Yisrael and in America during this challenging time of war, where we are all like unsure how to react and feeling tremendous feelings? Any final message?
I want to stay positive as much as I can, but I think one of the messages that, as educators here in Israel and people living here in Israel, I think again, the overwhelming majority of the parents and of our students are supportive and have kept their children here in Eretz Yisrael, and are all in, and it's tremendous, and they deserve all the credit in the world, because it's not easy and it's not popular in certain communities for sure. But I think we need to do a better job in terms of parents having the resilience and confidence, and also living that emunah, that of choosing the right thing over the more convenient thing. It's more convenient to have your kid home at this time. But I believe strongly that the right thing is to have them here. Again, besides this, as was described, the growth that's happening for these students, all the chesed opportunities that they're involved in, and really being part of the supply chain of providing for Eretz Yisrael, for Am Yisrael, at a time when there's no one else to do it. So our students have to do it, and they feel like they're really contributing. But the chinuch aspect, the educational aspect of we've raised our children to be proud religious Zionists, to believe that the state of Israel is where the Jewish people are meant to be, and that this is something that's worth fighting for. The educational message of having your son here, daughter here at this time is there's no greater time to give that message. And we need to build that resilience that even though it's not the easier choice, it's not the more convenient choice, but it is the right choice. And if this is how we raised our kids till now, this is how we have to now live our lives now, in this way. And again, yeshakach to all those parents who continue to support their kids from far, and giving them this opportunity to be part of something much greater than themselves.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Burg.
Yeah, I think I'll just jump off that last point that Rabbi Olshin made. Supporting your children from afar is a really difficult thing to do. I think a lot of the guys here will tell you that, especially, in Yerushalayim, Mevasaret, Beit Shemesh, things are relatively calm. And that doesn't mean that things are okay, and we're not suggesting that things are okay, because things are not okay. But we are okay in this not okay situation. And sometimes I think that being farther away is more difficult, especially for those that are glued to the news. And I'm not suggesting that a person shouldn't be well informed, though I have my strong doubts about whether listening to the news, especially after yesterday, keeps a person well informed, especially when we have U.S. congresswomen that continue to have, at this moment, up on their social media, posts about the destruction of a hospital from the IDF, which were not only wrong, it was a Hamas rocket, but the hospital is intact. And there's, demonstrable evidence that that's true. So when a person is watching the news, first of all, I would say, take it with a very large grain of salt. And I think that when parents are watching the news, they would imagine their sons and daughters are sort of sitting here in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, with, bullets whizzing over their heads. And that's really not the case. And so what can happen sometimes is that because of our own anxieties as parents, which are understandable, we'll sort of not intentionally, but we could put that on our kids, and 6,000 miles away, the guys are okay. And so what I would want to convey to parents is that to support our children as they're here means to be able to hold your own stuff to the best of your ability, and to be able to ask with genuine curiosity, how are you? What's going on? And to be in communication with the yeshivas and the seminaries. If you feel like there's something that does need to be brought to our attention, I know that all the yeshivas and seminaries are excellent at working with the parents and trying to be there as much as possible. I do think that sometimes you have funny stories about parents that are reaching out to share some silly things. I remember when COVID hit, there was a parent who called me up. They were very upset because their son told them that they had a really delicious apple. And the mother inferred from that the child had not had an apple all year to eat. And which wasn't true. The kid had apples all the time. He just happened to mention to his mother that he had a really delicious apple. And that meant that she had to call the yeshiva to tell the yeshiva, how come my son is not having more apples while the boys were in quarantine, while they were in bidud. So I do think that reaching out to the yeshivas and seminaries should be for important things, understanding that yeshivas and seminaries are holding a lot right now. But I think if parents can really be there and normalize whatever it is that their kids are going through and be able to provide them chizuk and to be able, again, to echo those words, which I'm for sure, Rabbi Olshin, I'll try to say b'shem omro, but I'm definitely going to rip them off, to let them know that what they're doing is heroic. They're superheroes on the front line, but they are heroes for being here and supporting Am Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael at this point. So I would just urge everyone to operate from a place of thoughtfulness rather than from fear, and understanding that there's a difference between fear and danger. And if we thought, and I think this is probably true of every yeshiva and every seminary, if we thought that being here put their children in an exceptional level of risk, we would close the yeshivas and seminaries. We're not looking to put people in a situation of danger. The reason that none of the yeshivas and seminaries have closed is because we're operating according to the guidelines of this country, of the U.S. Embassy. People are not being pulled back. It's not a dangerous situation per se. Of course, things are highly escalated right now, but within the safe confines of our yeshivas and seminaries, following the protocols that the yeshivas and seminaries have, we're doing our best to navigate. And I think the support from the parents to the kids is huge. I would also only add, and I, Baruch Hashem, I'm sure Olshin has received the same. I've received dozens and dozens and dozens of thank you emails from parents. And I just want to say to all of those parents, thank you for your support, because we're working ridiculously hard here to provide for our children. And when I say our children, I mean we share them for the time that they're here. They're our children. They're your biological children. They're our children. And we're working not just overtime. We're working overtime, Shabbat, overtime, Shabbat, overtime. And if you can, take a moment, even a 3-sentence email to the administrators, to the rebbeim of your children, and to be able to say thank you so much for what you're doing. The chizuk means a lot to us, knowing that we're together on the same team. So that would be my last words for parents.
Amazing. Thank you both. And I also think that the message that you both shared is also relevant even for parents who are not of, that age, even for parents of younger children or older children, no matter what age, that whatever your ideals are of raising your children, we should ideally try to not let that go out the window during this time. And we want to raise resilient children. We want to raise children who stand, with what they're doing. And I think that that's a very powerful message. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you both for your time. I know that I originally said 45 minutes. We're on for an hour and 20 minutes. And it's really, I know you're already balancing so much. So to take the time out to give us the chizuk and to give us the insight and to really being vulnerable and sharing in a real way about your experiences there is really, for me, this has been extremely powerful. Listening to you here speak, Rabbi Olshin, about your situation, I was tearing up, and I can't even imagine having gone through it the way that you did. I've been in a fog ever since the war has broken out, and I feel like I can't even imagine Kal v'chomer sheba Kal v'chomer the way that each of you are dealing with it. So thank you, really, thank you for taking the time, and a tremendous yasher koach to you both. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Jews Next Door. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. I'd love to hear your takeaways. Reach out to us. Reach out to me at yair@jenalf.org, hi@jenalf.org. You can check us out on the website. You could leave a question there. We'd love to be in touch. Please be in touch. Check us out on Instagram at Parenting the Jews Next Door. Hit me up on Twitter at yair_menshel. And we're on TikTok now too. We have some great content, a lot of really great insights into parenting, tips, parenting pointers, reaction videos, and quotes. We have a lot going on. We have a lot of articles. You want to check it out. Check it out at jenalf.org. You won't be sorry you did. And I look forward to hearing from you. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the podcast, make sure you subscribe and share it with your family and friends. Looking forward to another great episode next week.